Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Rachel. I am a labor and delivery nurse by day, and I read most of the other hours. So in 2023, I read 200 books. I did monthly videos, and this is my favorites video. So I'm gonna go through my 5 stars by month, tell you what my favorite book was per month, then I'll tell you a winner, and then I have a few more like other categories that maybe they weren't the favorite of the month, but they were a favorite of something else. So without further ado, let's start with January. In January, I had 2 5 stars, and the first, maybe it was the first, I don't know which order I read them in, was Hester. This is a Scarlet Letter retelling with a different perspective. It was the book of the month. So it was October 2022, but I read it in January of 23. This one just hit it out of the park. So good. Where Scarlet Letter is pretty like dry and like old English writing, this was amazing. The twist to it, I mean, it's not really a twist, but the different way that she told the story was that Hester has, gotta look up the term here, synesthesia. And so she sees words written out like in colors in like stitching, so she can like stitch things that she thinks say things. In Puritan culture, anything that's like mysterious or strange is witchcraft. So it just adds a whole nother layer to this. There's some like other like, I don't believe they really had like traditional, it's awful, like American slavery yet, but like the like looking down on people that look differently than you, it was so good. So that one was awesome. And then just narrowly beating it out for favorite was Cursed. This mostly won because I love fantasy so much, and I think it has slightly broader appeal just because not that many people I think are gonna pick up like a Scarlet Letter retelling, but this was so good. So this is the sequel to Gilded. This is a Marissa Meyer Rumpelstiltskin retelling. I love our characters. I loved Gilded. It felt like the story was really starting to pick up and then it was done, which was a little bit confusing until I found out that it was a duology, and this did not disappoint. I mean, the cover is gorgeous. I don't know if you can see that. And Gilded was similar. So just Marissa Meyer really knows how to retell a fairy tale. It's like not a nice fairy tale either. It's like creepy, high stakes. Oh, Mabel is joining us, so you will probably start hearing some weird noises. But yeah, this was great. Oh, here she is. She's here. Here for 2024. Where are you going? Where are you going? Okay. Then in February, I had quite a few 5 stars. So February, April, and November, I had like a bunch of 5 stars, and I don't know if I was in a really good mood that month and just loved things, or if these things like really like hit it out of the park, which looking back, I do feel like most of them stand up. Like most of them I would still say 5 stars. Some of them like, maybe that was an impression from just finishing it, but still a 5 star is What Happened to You by Oprah Winfrey and Dr. Bruce Perry. This is a book about trauma. So it's conversations on trauma, resilience, and healing. My biggest takeaway from this book is that the first 3 months of your life is really the groundwork for the rest. So if you have trauma in the first 3 months, you're gonna have less resilience, and everything else in life is harder. If you have a loving home and your needs are met in the first 3 months, you build so much resilience. And that's not to say that people that don't have trauma cannot overcome that. It's just harder. Like that first 3 months sets you up so much. It'd be nice if we had maternity leave for that long. That's paid, right? So this, I listened to an audiobook, and so Oprah would read her paragraphs, Dr. Perry would read his. It was just very well done. It was a very good nonfiction, even when I didn't necessarily want to read nonfiction. Okay. Then I have reminders of him. This is a Colleen Hoover. Read this in one sitting. Very emotional. Loved it. So our main character was put in prison for something that she did. We don't know what it is until it kind of unfolds in the book. But she was pregnant at the time, so she has a baby in prison, and now she's trying to be reunited with her child that doesn't know her, and she has poor relationship with her guardian. So trying to rebuild those relationships. The love story is really more about her and her child. The romance that's in this is also good and spicy. I just really love this one. So if you have read a few Colleen Hoovers and you just don't think that they're that like good or deep, I would recommend you read this one. This is a really good one. Yeah, love it. I then read Loath to Love You by Ali Hazelwood. So this is not a novel. This is 3 short stories that end up being a novel altogether. Like they like know each other, but it's not like a novel. So I had previously read this novella and loved it. So I reread it and then read the other 2. Yeah, so it's Under One Roof, Stuck With You, and Below Zero. And then there's a bonus chapter, I think, where they are like hanging out or something. So these are all women in STEM, which is super interesting. I love Ali Hazelwood. She writes some good spice. Love her characters. Is a good one for February. The Yellow Wife is a very different tone than the others. So I read a lot of romance in February, and then I don't know what made me pick this up, but it was very good. It was really a horrific story. So Phoebe is I believe she's like a mulatto slave who is purchased to be a wife for a white man. He owns a prison and he is awful. Yeah, so she is his wife. She raises his children. So she has some privilege. She's kind of more like where you have like plantation slave, house slave. She's a wife, but he doesn't respect her as equal. He doesn't respect their children as equal. It's very strange and very like interesting to try to dig into the psyche of a white man who thinks that black people and mulattoes and colored people are less than them, but they're still willing to procreate with them. And then, yeah, like how you treat your children after that. So good. So it's not even that long. It's like 260 pages, but it's just like riveting, page turning. I highly recommend this. If you like historical fiction, I would read anything by Sadika Johnson. I've read 2. They've both been 5 stars. So not a topic I really want to read about, but it was so good. And my favorite of the month was Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. So this is neighbors at like a summer house who grow up together. They fall in love. Something happens. And they're going to get back together. But it was just such a beautiful story. I read it in one sitting, and it's not a thin book. Yeah, so it's Elliot and Macy, sorry. And it's just so good. There's heartbreak, young romance, old romance. It's about, a lot of it is about stories, their love of books. It was just so well done. This is probably, between this and maybe The Unhoneymooners, this is probably one of my favorites of theirs. In March, I only had 1 5-star, so easy to choose a favorite, and that is The Well of Ascension. This is the second in the Mistborn trilogy by Brandon Sanderson. The first of the Mistborn, it's called The Final Empire. So the premise of the series is that the evil, emperor wins against the good guys. So he is ruling. And now what do you do with that? Book 1 has a huge twist in it, and now in book 2, we're dealing with the fallout, trying to learn more information because we don't know much information, and that is really crippling. And as we do things and learn more, we find out that we don't know anything still. So yeah, this was such a well done series. So I believe 1 and 3 I gave 4 stars, but like Well of Ascension was good, and then at the end it was just like, what? So good. In April, my birth month, I read lots of good books, and I think some of it was that I just wanted to read only good books in my birth month. So I read Local Woman Missing. I own this copy, but someone's borrowing it. I feel like this is going to be one that's going to be loaned out a lot. I don't have a lot of thrillers in my bookshelves, but then like the ones that I like, I keep, and that's what a lot of people like to read, so that's what I loan out the most. So Local Woman Missing, there's someone missing, actually multiple people missing, multiple storylines, multiple shady characters making bad decisions, and when it comes together in the end, wow, just like chef's kiss, well put together, didn't see it coming, relatively plausible, was a good one. I guess I haven't learned that yet by Shauna Nyquist. So she is a local to the Michigan area. She currently lives in New York, and that is what this book is about. Her husband went into seminary in New York, so kind of uprooting their Midwest family and like learning new things. And yeah, like the idea. So Present Over Perfect is my favorite book of hers, which is about being a perfectionist, and I feel like this just really applies to like when perfectionists are in new things and trying to embrace the newness of it and just saying, I guess I haven't learned that, and like being okay with not knowing everything, which is very, very hard. My best memoir of the year, I think this is probably my best. This was so good, and I wouldn't even call myself a Jessica Simpson fan, but this book was good, the story was good, the writing was good, the narration was done by her, it was an audiobook, and it was just so like wild. So I didn't watch The Newlyweds when she was married to Nick Lachey, but I know of it because I follow pop culture quite closely. I did like Jessica Simpson's music when she was pretty famous for music. Watched her in the Dukes of Hazzard. Dukes of Hazzard? I don't know. But this was crazy. So it deals with her like alcoholism, it deals with her famous family, deals with the famous people she's dated, and this girl has no shame. She just gives the whole story. Like, so it's very entertaining because you get all this drama that you didn't know was coming. And then I read The New Happy Place. So good. Sorry, I'm trying to... Okay. So, Happy Place, the new Emily Henry. The only downside to this book, I thought, was that it was on the East Coast, and the rest of her books are, like, on Lake Michigan. So, I just missed the representation. But I liked I think it's ironic that it's called Happy Place. This is one of her sadder books. It's just dealing with, like, more adult topics, and it's heavier than her other books have been. I don't know where this falls in my ranking. It might be the one I like the least, but it's still a 5-star. So they're all 5 stars. Yeah, I liked the main characters. I liked the story. I liked the pretending that we're still together so that our vacation with our friends goes well. I liked the friend dynamics and just how when you graduate from college, how everything changes and how you have to decide what to hold on to and what can change. I reread Uprooted by Naomi Novik. I don't do a lot of rereading because there's so many other books that I want to read. But this was really good on a reread. This is one of my favorite books. Naomi Novik does such a good job writing like fairy tales. So Uprooted is about Agnieszka, who is like basically given up as a tribute to a sorcerer. And then she finds out that she has magic, but it's a very different type of magic. There are evil woods that are encroaching and like taking over people's minds. So trying to get to the bottom of that. It's just good. The characters are good. The romance is good. The fairy tale is good. Highly recommend. my favorite book I read in April was The Spanish Love Deception. So I feel like this has been floating around, I think it was written in 2022. So I finally got to it in 2023. I kind of gave into it because I had heard so much about it. Oh, it was actually written in 2021. So I sat down to read this and never got up after starting it. So is that because I have a lot of time on my hands? Maybe. But it also could be because the dynamic between these two is great. They go to Spain for a wedding. Our main character does not have a date to her cousin's wedding, and her enemy at work says he'll go with her because, surprise, he's in love with her. Yeah, the banter. It's like not plausible, but also it is plausible. So I could suspend my disbelief enough. Yeah, I just really liked it. Liked it a lot. Enough that I read the sequel. Don't read the sequel. Yeah. That's what I'm going to say about that. In May, I picked up Volume 4 of Fence. You've probably heard me talk about this series if you have watched any of my recaps. I've recently read Volume 5, which was also amazing, but this was a 5-star. I think this is the first 5-star I gave in this series so far. This is about fencing. Our main character, Nicholas, is the bastard son of a famous fencer who has a legitimate son. We're building up to some sort of a confrontation. Hopefully, at least that's what it feels like. He also has another like arch nemesis that he is maybe falling in love with on the fencing team. Fencing is very interesting to me now. I was never ever interested in it before. But it's just a good story. So these are kids at a prep school, and just the lifestyle is very different. Love it. Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater is Pride and Prejudice with a little bit of fantasy. So our main character is Theodora. So she goes by Dora. She one day gets half of her soul stolen by a demon or a fairy. Someone. I think it's a demon. And because of that, she loses like her filter. So she has no shame and she says ridiculous things, and she doesn't understand why we like bow and curtsy and like anything about propriety. So she's very entertaining. So a little bit like Elizabeth Bennet, where like she doesn't care as much, but Elizabeth still does follow most protocols. She then falls in love with a dashing villain. His name is Elias. I think he's a sorcerer. Yes, well, he's the Lord Sorcier. I think he's a sorcerer. And they try to get back her soul. It's very good. I have not read the sequel. My sister really liked it, so I will read that. And then my favorite in May, one of my favorites of the year, just so good. Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Read every book by this woman. I love them. I'm working on her back catalog, but this one did not pick it up as easily because it's about a tennis star. I don't like tennis. I don't care about tennis. This book made me cry. It made me care about tennis. Just the way that this character is written, and she's not even like really like a hero. Like, she has demons. She is very like vain and self-involved. She has all her walls up and does not want to fall in love. This book was so well written, and I just distinctly remember reading it in a tire shop, waiting for my tire to get fixed with a French bulldog. I was like trying to get on my lap the whole time, and all had weird eyes. But this book is so good. Amazing. If you like sports, if you don't like sports, if you just like books. This very subtly ties into her other books. Like, characters overlap, but I really don't notice those. So when people are like, oh, it's so-and-so, I'm like, yeah. It doesn't take away at all if you haven't read the other books. But I would highly recommend Carrie Soto is Back, The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, Daisy Jones and the Six, Malibu Rising. They're all good. They're all good. Carrie Soto. Best of May. Now we're getting into June. I only had one 5-star, and I'm sure I read plenty of books in June, but here's my 5-star. It was amazing. Christina Lauren, Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating. We have two characters, boy and girl, Josh and Hazel, they decide right away that they don't like each other, even though they do. They just decide that they don't like each other. So they try to double date multiple times, and then they end up having sex and then still double dating because they both decided that the other one doesn't like them. It was fun. It was flirty. The banter was great. I love the main characters. Like, Hazel was so fun. And I feel like I'd watch her do anything, especially Josh. And then the dates were funny. It wrapped up well. Just highly recommend. If you're looking for like a good 1-2 sitting rom-com, it was not long. Perfect beach read. In July, this is where we got into Summerween. So I read some, maybe a little more like murdery books. So They Never Learn. Dr. Clark is a professor at Gorman University. She murders people. So, like, she murders evil people and tries to, like, get back at them. So, this is people hunting her down. We hear her backstory. There are two points of view, and when they come together, it is amazing. So, yeah, I just highly recommend. This is a great thriller, and you like the villain. So, or are the villains the evil men that never learn? You know? Maybe. I read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. So this is a series. This is the first. I will be working on the second and third soon. So our main character is Andy Bell. Nope, it's not. So Pip is our main character, and she is investigating a murder that happened, I believe, last year. So Andy Bell disappeared. She was murdered by her boyfriend, who then killed himself. So we're trying to figure out, like, she's doing like a senior project on this, and she's starting to figure out that, like, things don't tie together. So she's trying to figure out who done it, and you'll have to read it. But I think this is YA, so it just reads really fast. Like, I love a good YA mystery. They read really fast. They're not, like, super gruesome, but yeah, I'm going to finish this series, and then I would be interested in reading her, like, 5 Survive series as well. My favorite book for July was a Katherine Center book, Happiness for Beginners. So I think this was a back title. Yeah, this was 2015. Maybe one of my favorites of hers. I love Katherine Center. Do not get me wrong. Things You Save in a Fire. How to Survive a Plane Crash. The Bodyguard. Hello Stranger. Like, I love her books. They're either 4 or 5 stars. And I don't even feel like there's, like, that much that happens in that. Like, there's an overarching plot, but I love her characters, and I love how she writes. So this one crept up on me because I don't think it should have been that exciting. I don't like journeys. I hate journeys, wilderness books. Like, I read Wild by Cheryl Strayed, and I hated it because it's about people just hiking and struggling. I don't want that. I don't want to struggle. I don't like to hike that much. I'll go see a pretty lake, but I'm not hiking the whole Pacific Northwest Trail, you know? So Happiness for Beginners, our main character goes on, I believe she breaks up with someone, like something, yes, newly divorced. So she decides to go on this wilderness trail that she is not cut out for, not ready for. And her brother's best friend goes with. Oh, the romance is so good. The survival is so good. And, like, it's just so interesting what they learn on this trip. I loved it. It is a Netflix show. And even though they had, like, good characters, it just didn't adapt very well. So it was okay. It just wasn't as good as the book. So definitely read the book if you're going to watch it. Then in August, we have just 2 books, and I don't have either of the physical ones here. So I read House of Eve after reading The Yellow Wife by Sadika Johnson. This book was so good. So I believe it's set in like 1950 1950s. Our main character gets married, is unable to have children. So apparently, if you're wealthy in the 1950s, you can just go buy babies. And there's a lot more to this story. Multiple points of view, the historical information. It's just like crazy what we've come from. And the babies that you can buy are low income babies that they take from the moms. So, you know, the just all the ethics of that. Yeah. It was so good. And I loved the characters too. Then, dun, 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 dun. Yeah, I've talked about Fourth Wing. My copy is loaned out, as it probably will be for the rest of its life. But when it comes back, I might reread it because I am already having withdrawal from it. Do I need to speak on Fourth Wing? Fantasy is my jam. This is maybe the best it's ever been. I love the main character. I love Violet. I love Xaden. I love the not romantic triangle. I love the lore that is coming out of this. I love the dragons. So good. And just the number of twists in this book as they set up the world. Like, they didn't even have to set it up very hard because I feel like it's relatively straightforward. But as they set up the world, the way that they introduce new information from Violet just like saying facts. If you do not know what Fourth Wing is, Violet, our main character, her mom is a general. She has been trained to be a scholar. So she's supposed to be becoming a scholar like her father was. And at the last minute, her mom like pulls the rug out from under her and says, no, you're going to be a dragon rider. And puts her in dragon rider school, where she surely will be killed because she has a chronic illness where her joints are loose, basically. So she has a lot of chronic pain. She's very clumsy. She's not very strong. But because she's trained to be a scholar her whole life, she has so much information in her little head. And when she's nervous, she recites it. So it's just a really natural way to learn things without having an info dump. It's like her nervously talking about things. And it makes sense for her to have answers for things and also to have contacts that have answers for things. So it just makes sense how she has more information than other people. I can't tell you anything else. It's so good. It's so good. All right. So August, only 2 favorites, but great. In September, I read... Sharon Says So recommended A Fever in the Heartland by Timothy Egan. So this is the Ku Klux Klan's plot to take over America and the woman who stopped them. So this was set, I want to say this is the 1940s, 20s? I need to look this up, what year it is. But the Ku Klux Klan had multiple rises to power, so it wasn't just like the 1950s and 60s and like civil rights movement that we think of in school and where we have learned of the Ku Klux Klan. There were many iterations of it. They were very powerful where I live in the Midwest, and especially during this time period, like 1 in 10 white men were in the Ku Klux Klan. This was something that you did with your family. You went to Ku Klux Klan like picnics. You and your family were part of it. Like, a lot of pastors, city leaders were in the Ku Klux Klan. This was not something to hide. So just horrifying. The woman who takes down the Ku Klux Klan was a Pi Beta Phi. I am a Pi Phi. And Valparaiso University is also mentioned in here. And it feels like a bullet dodged. So you can read the book if you want to know more about it, but this is a good one. It's horrific. So do not go into this thinking it's going to be a light tale. These people are horrible and they hate. And you know what? They don't treat the people that they're supposed to respect well either. So it's all about power and just who they choose to have it over. other book that I read that I loved in September, probably not a surprise if you've been here before. So The Inheritance Games is one of my favorite series. The Brothers Hawthorne is, so it's not technically The Inheritance Games. I think this is like a spin-off of it, but it follows the brothers. It's following two of them most specifically, but it does feel like just a continuation. And the same as the other books, it's like a treasure hunt. We are solving mysteries, but also getting like quick payoffs. Our chapters are 1 to like 4 pages long. It's YA. It's so good. So I highly recommend the Inheritance Games series and now The Brothers Hawthorne. I also would recommend Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I have not read her other series. My sister has read part of one and said it's just as good. So I will probably try to read those if I can get to them this year. So yeah, this was my favorite, mostly because Fever in the Heartland is awful, you know? Like people biting people, and no thank you. So Brothers Hawthorne won for that reason. Sorry, shaking the tree. If you know, you know. And then in October, I could not decide. So my 2 5-stars, they're just tied, okay? Because they're 2 different genres. They're 2 totally different things. So we have You Again by Kate Goldbeck. This is similar to When Harry Met Sally. So we have 2 people that meet each other and hate each other. And then they keep coming back together and just build they build a friendship. Then there's a romance, and then the fallout of the romance. It moved so quickly because we get like a story and then it jumps forward like 5 years. And so that's how like the first, probably third of the book goes, where it's like, 3 years later. And so you're like relearning what they're doing and where they're coming from. There's a hair across my face that I need to get. So that just makes it move so much faster. And I feel like for how thick the book looks, it actually has pretty large print. I read this. I would have read it in like one sitting if I could have, but I had to work in between. But just like immaculate fall vibes. If you want to save this for fall, I would totally understand. Like the cover is gorgeous and that's the vibe, you know? So maybe this year you can read You Again and watch When Harry Met Sally. So good. The other is Divine Rivals. I was told to read this if you were having fourth wing withdrawal. So that's why I recommended it to my sister. She read it before I did and loved it. Very different, but if you like fantasy, you will probably like this. So our main characters are war correspondents in a war of the gods. And it feels like it's like very Gilded Age or like 1920s. So yeah, I don't feel like I can give more away. There's like magical typewriters, War of the Gods. It ends on a delightful twist. Not delightful, horrifying. And I have not read the second one yet, but 5 stars, really intriguing. It's like if World War II were being fought by gods that had power over you. And I'm sure there's all sorts of metaphors in there, you know? November was another huge month. I had 7 5 stars. So I was in a great mood in November, you know? Spells for Forgetting by Adrian Young. Our main character, his mother has passed away, so he's going back to the island that that their family has lived on, that there's so much history. He was basically chased out of town for something that happened. So as he's back, people are upset that he's back and are like kind of tormenting him. He has an old love that he's like reuniting with, but there's also a lot of questions there. This is like speculative. So there's like very subtle magic. I don't know if I can give away more. So someone was murdered and we need to figure out who did it, but he also is trying to like stay alive while he's here. Like, I think he's just spreading his mom's ashes or burying her. Then we have She Deserves Better. This is about how women are affected by purity culture and how they're treated specifically in the church. There's a lot, they back this up with a lot of research. It is very interesting and applicable to my life. This is also like written as like a chapter and then like a work page for you to do with your like teenager or preteen daughter. So definitely more towards women than men, but just very interesting. I would recommend if you have a daughter that you're trying to raise in the church that you would read this and possibly work through it with her. It was so good. Assistant to the Villain is, I really think this was like another like TikTok sensation or like self-published book that now is going viral because it is delightful. So our main character needs a job really badly because she supports her family, and she accidentally saves the villain, or the villain accidentally saves her, but she needs a job. He offers her a job. There's a lot of chemistry. There's also a frog that holds signs for what he wants to say. So like one word lines. So like he's up in the corner here and it says help. Just a lot of like comedic relief. The drama was getting good at the end and then it's done. So there better be a sequel. I've recommended this to multiple people. The one person that's read it has also loved it. So yeah, it's like fantasy without being fantasy. Like it's like a bad fairy tale, you know, like the bad side of it, I guess. So kind of like how Shrek is your fairy tale, but they like twisted it. It's like that, and like very comedic and great. Can I get my pile? I also read Hidden Potential for my Sharon Says So book club. So this is the science of achieving greater things. So this talks about our school systems and how they're set up. This talks about hiring and how we should hire, and how the way that we hire people and look at resumes and school performance does not actually show us who's going to be the best at the job. It was just so good. So Adam Grant writes really thought-provoking things at just the most base level. He also puts in funny little, so he loves a good graph. That's not like hard to read, right? And he also sometimes draws little pictures like these. And it's so good. So thought-provoking. If only we would change our systems based on this, you know? V.E. Schwab, one of my favorites. This is, I believe it's a continuation of the Darker Shade of Magic series. So that is a trilogy. And it kind of wraps up with book 3, but it also leaves the door open, literally. And the Fragile Threads of Power it's kind of a spin-off. Like, we still have our main characters. They're still all there. But there is a new girl who's the main character. And she has a different type of power. And there's evil afoot. And so the premise of this book is that there are 4 Londons. Red London, Grey London, White London, Black London. Black London was starting to get destroyed by the magic. Like, it was starting to deteriorate. And so the other Londons built walls to keep it out. And now we're going to have to deal with the aftermath of that. So there's definitely going to be a book after this. They left it wide open. There's big plot points happening. It looks super duper thick. It's quite large lettering. There's lots of like title pages. It's so good. I honestly took longer to read this book because I just didn't want it to end. So, it's so good. But along those same lines, Iron Flame. It took me a minute to get into this because I didn't want to read it, like start reading it and then have to work like 3 or 4 days. This is the sequel to Fourth Wing. I gave it 5 stars. Yeah, must have, because it's on my 5-star list. So it's not 5 stars like Fourth Wing is 5 stars. It's like 4.5 maybe. And it's just because like Fourth Wing was able to like build the world, ramp up, do a bunch of twists and stop. Now Iron Flame has to pick up where those twists left off and like rebuild some of the world. We need to get a lot more backstory. This was such a dense book. It looks smaller than my Fourth Wing, but the words are so much smaller and the pages were thinner as well. So it was like, gosh, this keeps going and going. But I also love this story. I love these people. I love what is happening with Andarna. And I'm not going to tell you more about that, but wow. And then you all know, if you've read this, you know the twist at the end. And a lot of people are really angry about it. And I feel like, look, if we have twists like this, that just means that there's more story. There's more that we're going to learn. And I can't tell you more. I'm so excited for book 3. But my best. So those were all amazing books. All amazing. So good. My best book of the month was Wayward by Amelia Hart. This was perfection as far as like spooky, but not like straight up fantasy, spooky. So we have 3 women that are generational, but very far apart. So one I think is like 1500s, one is like 1800s, one is current day. Everyone is being wronged by a man. They all have nature magic, which is super interesting. Some of them are like embracing it. Some of them are running from it, hiding from it. And some of them are being beaten by their husbands, so they don't use it. It's good. The way that the storylines come together, the nature magic, women helping women, it's so good. I would just read it, okay? And it's not like a very long book either. And the cover's gorgeous. Like, crows are creepy and all that, but ooh. Oh, I also own this book, but it's loaned out. I think it actually has moved from one person to the other as well because the other person loved it so much too. All right. And my only 5-star in December, which I read a lot of holiday romance, and I don't expect those to be 5 stars. I expect them to just be a little entertaining. But I did reread one that I read last year and gave it a 5-star, and this year I would give it a 6 if I could. So Faking Under the Mistletoe, I've probably spoken about this before. This book is so good. Ashley Shepherd. I went out and bought the only other book that she's written to read this year because I just love it so much, especially when you reread the book and it's just as good. Gosh, so good. I will probably read this every December now just to get me into the holiday mood. Maybe November if I can't wait. It's so good. The banter, the characters, the holiday, the romance, the spice, and the subplot. It's just good. Well done. So well done. Those are my favorites. Can you guess my book of the year? Oh, Babel just got off my lap, so I gotta shift my hips. Thoughts? Is it Fourth Wing? Yeah, it is. It might be my best book of all time. So, yeah, sorry if I'm insufferable about it. I just love it. I've been trying to not push it down people's throats, and I do feel like people are finding it themselves, which is really helpful. It's a very fun book to talk to other people about, especially if they're not like big fantasy people. It has just been so fun. The dragons, the school, anyway, can't wait to see where it's going. And I'm just along for the ride. I just like really trust her with where this story is going because in these 2 books she's already done just more than I could imagine. Okay, we're already 44 minutes into this, but I also thought it would be fun to do some like superlatives. So, most underhyped book of the year that I loved, I would say Assistant to the Villain. So that one, I saw it on a few lists, but like it is so good. So good. Especially for like fall vibes and like a little bit of fantasy, but like so much humor. So Assistant to the Villain for that one. I can't stop thinking about Fourth Wing, Carrie Soto. Those are 2 that I just I think about. Like, I want other people to read Carrie Soto. It's so good. Other people are now reading Fourth Wing, which is really helpful. My last one, which this story is literally so ridiculous. Like, I just need other people to read it. And this is one of those things where it's like history is ridiculous. Meeble, stop. The Children's Blizzard. Let me quick strangle this dog while she licks things. So I forget what year this was in, the 1800s. There was a day in, it was like all across the plains. I can't remember the states. Sorry. We follow multiple people though, so it's multiple states. And the children were like let out of school around 2, and by like 3 o'clock, they were like frozen where they stood because it was such a bad blizzard. And like, I had no idea this had happened. It's truly horrifying. The story was so well written. It was one of those, like, I didn't really want to read it, but then I got so into it, and the story is bizarre. Like, it's just the subplots and the other, like, so good. And then I just keep thinking about it. It derailed slightly in the end, which is why I did not give it 5 stars. Mostly because I think the author has too many ideas, which isn't a bad thing. You can write another book. Like, I'll read about your Native American schools. I want to, but not in this book about the blizzard because it's confusing. That book was wild. The Children's Blizzard. My best retellings. So I would say Hester and Cursed. So my January favorites. So the Rumpelstiltskin retelling and the Scarlet Letter retelling. So good. I do love a retelling. I do love it. Favorite characters, I would say Olivia from Faking Under the Mistletoe. She was delightful. 2 years in a row. Absolute Christmas joy. Love her. But like not dumb, just delightful. Other favorite characters. Okay, so this is not on my favorite books list, just because this book I gave, I think, 4 stars. But Mia Corvair from Dark Dawn. Look at that cover. It's gorgeous and creepy. I love creepy. So Mia is a badass. The second book, she's like a gladiator. She is an assassin in the first book. In the third book, she gets her revenge. In case you were wondering. I don't feel like I spoiled the plotline for you. Yeah, so she's intense, and I just love her so much. My biggest or best surprise, Fourth Wing, Iron Flame. If you know, you know. If you don't, you should really figure it out. Children's Blizzard. Wild ride. Wild the whole way through. And then the Golden Enclaves, which is the 3rd book in the Schoolomance series. I think I have a screenshot of the book. Yeah. So this is a Naomi Novik series. And I think I gave this one 4 stars just because it just like lagged a little bit, but it left me gasping in places. So A Deadly Education, The Last Graduate, The Golden Enclaves. And this one, the way that it like ties up the series is wild and horrifying. What people do for power. Yeah, worst books I read this year. Twisted Love. I will not be finishing that series. Even if the other books are amazing. Like, the first one's awful. The characters were awful. I hated it. And then The Fine Print is another romance that... So it's like if Disney had, like, a grandson who is taking over the company, but he's also, like, banging one of the designers, but he's a douchebag. I hated it. I thought that the way that he treated her was borderline abusive. And so, yeah, I'm not going to stand for that. I will not be reading any more in that series. And then in my, like, horror reading that I read in, I think it was Summerween, maybe it was October, I'm Thinking of Ending Things and Everything the Darkness Eats. Just hated them. So I'm Thinking of Ending Things. I honestly just, like, it was super creepy, and I just also had no idea what was going on. I hate confusion more than anything else in a book. And then Everything the Darkness Eats was just gross. It was gross. It was, I don't even want to talk about it, but it was disgusting, and it didn't actually move the plot that much forward. Like, it's one thing if you have something horrible happen and it moves your plot and it has a purpose. That just felt disgusting. And I think the one book that I DNF'd this year was When Women Were Dragons. Yeah. And it was just because, like, I could not get into it. It felt like it was written more like a textbook, and I just didn't feel like slogging through it. So I moved on. My prettiest cover, I would say, again, my January books here winning. Cursed, which has our main character in their, like, red cloak. Gorgeous. Hester, it is embroidery because she embroiders. So beautiful. And then I also threw Dark Dawn on there. So pretty. And all these covers are gorgeous too. My favorite sequel. So I'd say Cursed, Well of Ascension, Dark Dawn, and then Hellbent. So especially most anticipated. Ninth House was great, and I was hoping that there was going to be a sequel to it because it wrapped up, but it also could have more. And this was great. I feel like I could read this again. I was just, like, trying to get through it because I want to know what happens. So I think I'd be less confused if I read it again. This is also a series that I would love to see on the screen. It would be very interesting. This is not for the faint of heart. They go to hell in this one. In case you wanted to know how, like, intense it gets. Actual hell. Books that made me cry, Reminders of Him and Carrie Soto. Probably more, but those I specifically remember crying. Made You Laugh, Half a Soul, and Faking Under the Mistletoe. Both super funny. And then, so I made a new category right at the end because I was thinking about the, like, books that I want to see be, like, a series. So, like, this one was a Netflix show, and it wasn't great. And I feel sad about that. I would be slightly terrified to see this in a series because sometimes it's hard to portray magic. Like, they're doing Wheel of Time right now, and it's hard. And then I would just be a little bit terrified to see any Christina Lauren book be a show too, you know? What else? I do think, like, the Brothers Hawthorne, the Inheritance Game series would be great. Fourth Wing they're adapting to be a series. So books that I don't think I read them. I didn't read these in 2023 because they would have been favorites. But they were so well adapted this year. Daisy Jones and the Six. This is an Amazon show, and I loved the book. I hadn't read it in a few years, and I watched the show. I've already watched the show at least twice through. My sister really loves this album and listens to it all the time. I just love it. It was so well done. They took this and adapted it so well. It's not the exact same, but it's just so well done. And as far as I know, it's just going to be the one season. It wraps it up. I don't know that it adds anything to have another season. But would I watch? Probably, just to see what they did. The other one that I didn't even know they made into something is Lessons in Chemistry. This is on Apple Plus. I came upon it, I think, in November, and I watched all of the episodes in 2 days. I think there's like 8 or 10 episodes. It is so well done. The main character is Brie Larson. It's just delightful. Like, it just feels like they did such a good job taking this woman off the page and onto the screen, and seeing her in her, like, 50s costumes and the other, like, plot points that they put in here. We lost one character and replaced it with another, probably for more, like, diversity and like, feelings of the times, which is totally fine. I thought they did such a good job with it. But yeah, highly recommend Lessons in Chemistry. And then the other one that I added, because I just saw it in the theater, is Boys in the Boat. Such a good film. My book club read that book a few years ago. I accidentally read the children's version, which took out some of the horrible Nazi propaganda. But it was a delightful time for me, and I still feel like I got the story. And the movie was so good. I've never been more excited to see boys row a boat. And the characters were good. It just was so good. Like, feel good, real stuff, like watching these people struggle. I could never be a rower and do the things that they did. And I also just love Olympic dreams coming true. So good. All right, those are my favorites for 2023. So feel free to read them and let me know how you feel about my favorites. Don't bash Fourth Wing though. Okay? Yeah. So you can comment if there's anything else that you think that should have been my favorite or that you want to read, and I will see you at the end of January.